Hi everyone, welcome back. And so from our last video, you've seen kind of the ideas of Adolf Hitler starting to come to fruition. They're starting to have these Nuremberg laws. They're starting to have all of these different rules and regulations about what the Jewish people can do within Germany. And that's all going to build, it's all going to culminate into what is known as the Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass. And so that's kind of our topic for today. This is video number 6 in your notes, and you can call it just that, Kristallnacht and the Holocaust. So let's go ahead and talk about a little bit more about what happens when Hitler gets full control and what kind of some of his twisted ideology really is. So the Kristallnacht happens in 1938, and it gets the nickname of the Night of Broken Glass mainly because that's exactly what it is. It's a night of organized violence, government-sanctioned violence against the Jewish people towards their homes, their businesses, and the individuals themselves. And it's a series of coordinated attacks, and at least 91 people are killed on this night, but another, even more so, 30,000 people are rounded up and sent to concentration camps. And it really marks the beginning of the widespread government-led violence against the Jewish people. Before that, it was small little things, denying of rights, maybe here or there people would be shot or captured or taken away to prisons. But this is kind of the signal to it. And we'll talk about in class, you'll see some of the reasons why this night happens, how it's almost a night of retribution, but it's really something that signals the beginning of the end for traditional Jewish life within Germany or German-occupied regions, mainly the Sudetenland, parts of Poland, parts of Austria. What's going to happen? And if you see here, this is actually a picture of a synagogue that is on fire, that was burned during that evening. So when Germany, as the war begins, and we're going to jump a little ahead in the timeline here, but as the war begins and Germany starts to take over other conquered lands, by 1942, Heinrich Himmler, a leader of the SS, was put in charge of kind of the German resettlement plans. Remember, Hitler wants this idea of Lebensraum, of living space, that they're going to move these people out of these regions, and new Germans are going to move in and colonize these areas in parts of Poland and parts of France, right? And so his job is to move the Slavic people in particular out of the eastern portions of Europe and replace them with Germans. Remember, the Slavic people are going to be many of your Balkan states, right? So you're going to have Czechoslovakia, Poland, Serbo-Croatians, right? Slovenians, Ukrainians. Himmler told many of his men when they started to move out that they might have to end up killing more than 30 million Slavs to make Hitler's plans complete. So this is something that is a major undertaking on the part of the Nazis, to physically remove these people from their homes and supplant them with other Germans who are going to colonize and take over their former homes and farmlands. And we'll see some direct, you'll get some direct stories of what happens in class when we talk about it a little later. Now, all of this begins to lead to the event known as the Holocaust. And many of you have at least a working knowledge of the Holocaust after having read Knight or maybe even Anne Frank. And we're going to talk much more about it, but to give you kind of some introduction information to it, the Holocaust really happens because Hitler, to him, there were two sides of Germany. One, there was the Aryans, who were the creators of all human culture and development, who were that master race. And two, there were the Jews, who he considered almost as parasites. And he said that they were actually out to destroy the Aryan race and destroy German culture. And so as a result, he comes up with what is known as the final solution. And that's a plan in 1942 to virtually eliminate all of the Jews from Europe. The Jewish people from across Europe were taken into concentration camps, and those camps were used as hard labor camps, slave labor, or were known as death camps, and they were killed. Sometimes immediately, as soon as they'd get off the train, they were taken away. Now, it is the job of this man, Reinhard Heydrich. He's given the task of administering the final solution. He's part of the Eisengruppen, right? And so he's going to use them to carry out the Nazi death plans. And after Germany's defeat of Poland, Heydrich orders all Polish Jews to be put into what is known as a ghetto. And those ghettos, their goal is to starve out and make life miserable for the people living within them. And some of the major ghettos are going to be kind of what we know as like the Warsaw Ghetto, and some of the other ones. They'll have very important places within this story. But by 1942, the SS was given a new job, and their new job is as a mobile killing unit. They're literally going to go from place to place and exterminate people on the spot. The SS death squads would round up the Jews in villages execute them, and bury their bodies in mass graves. And in some cases, they would even make those people, the Jewish people, or the people who they were tasked with killing, dig their own graves, shoot them, and then throw their bodies into the pit. So the people were literally digging their own graves. It's a very famous photo of a young man who is about to be killed after he has done just that. Now, there is resistance, and I don't want this to seem as though everybody kind of complicitly goes along with it. There is an underground resistance movement that forms that helps Jews escape during the war. If you've ever seen the movie Schindler's List, that is one of the resistance movements. In France, there is the La Chambon-sur-Lyon, and I'm sure I've butchered the name of that village, and I'm sorry, but its job is to help the Jews. One of the jobs that they do is to help the Jews escape German persecution within France. And the picture on the right here is actually some of the people that they saved, and at the end of the war, kind of posing for a picture as just a handful of the people who they helped save over the years. You also have the Warsaw Ghetto uprising that happens in 1941. And so the Polish Jews were put into ghettos, and one of the biggest ones was Warsaw, in Warsaw, Poland, the town of it. And the conditions within these ghettos are very harsh. Transportation in and out is restricted. They restrict the supplies of food and water and other basic essentials. And the idea is to really make the people suffer. And the Nazis would starve anyone who resisted. And if you see from the picture here, this is a photo of a young boy whose family has resisted Nazi occupation, and he is meant to starve, and he's laying on the streets dying. And in 1941, by then, 43,000 ghetto residents had died, or basically 1 in every 10 people within Poland. Now, in 1943, the uprising happens, and 750 Jews were able to hold off the Germans for a short time to avoid being taken into concentration camps. But eventually, they will lose the battle. The military might of Germany is too strong. The Eisengruppen's job is they do it too well. And 7,000 people are killed, and another 56,000 are deported. And the photo here is actually of some of the buildings in Warsaw being burned to the ground by the Nazis. And here's a couple more photos of them taking and surveying the damage and the events of the uprising. Here's also a picture of a very famous photo of a young boy with his hands up as the Nazis are dragging these people out and deporting them. And they were told that all they could do is carry what they could carry with them. They weren't able to pack up their possessions. They were only allowed to carry a small satchel of possessions. So they were leaving everything behind. Your toys, your music, your art, your books, everything that made up your belongings was left behind, and that was going to become the property of the people who were going to move in after you, those colonizers. Now, there is other resistance movements, and it does happen within Germany. There is a group known as the White Rose, which created anti-Nazi pamphlets, and they were led by a group of students, mainly Sophia, who is there in the middle. She was 22 years old, and Hans Scholl. He is on the left right there, and their job is they're going to run this group, that's the White Rose, that's comprised of students and professors from the University of Munich. And they really speak out against Nazi occupation, Nazi rule. They are eventually captured and killed in 1943. They are both beheaded, and the group is disbanded. But when their propaganda and their pamphlets do get out, and when the Allies will instead of doing bombing runs sometimes over Berlin, they will actually drop many of these pamphlets to try to convince the people of the atrocities of the Nazis and how terrible of an idea Nazism is, and how they should kind of resist against the Adolf Hitler and what the Nazis are doing. Tomorrow we're going to talk about this, the camps. You don't need to have this information in for right now, but understand that the ghettos are just the first cog in the wheel. We will eventually begin to move into systematic labor camps and systematic death camps that are going to happen. And one of the biggest ones are Auschwitz. And we'll talk much more about what happens and what goes on within these camps, both in class and videos. But for today, you need to make sure that you have this information in your notes. This, again, is day 6. You can call it the Kristallnacht and the origins of the Holocaust. And make sure you have this, and I will see you next time. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.